An insane animation style is going viral on Instagram and TikTok.
Editing is like cooking. The first time it doesn't turn out perfect. There's always something missing. But if you keep making the same dish every day, one day you'll master it.
In this video, I'll show you exactly how to recreate it step by step in After Effects. You'll find the project file and all the assets used for this animation down in the description and comments, so let's get into it. Alright, the first thing we'll do is jump right into After Effects. The video we're creating is designed for vertical formats like Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, and TikTok. So, to get a better view of our workspace, let's drag this panel over to the right. The video we're creating is made up of a few different parts. Let's create a new composition for the first part. We'll name it Part 1. We need it to be vertical, so let's set the width to 1080 and the height to 1920. First, we need a background. Let's create a new solid. We'll name it Background. Our background is made of two effects. The first one is Gradient Ramp. Let's add it to our background layer. We'll set the start color to white. For the end color, use this code. From the Ramp Shape menu, choose Radial Ramp. Let's place the start of ramp in the middle of the screen and drag the end of ramp just below the screen. Now hold down the Alt key and click on the stopwatch for end of ramp. It might look a little complicated, but don't worry, we're only using simple expressions in this tutorial. Type in wiggle 1990. This creates a nice flicker effect in the video. From now on, you can use this simple trick in any project where you want this effect. To make the flicker more visible, let's add our next effect. Type Posterize. Increase the level to 104. Let's see the result. Great. Now it's time to add our text. Let's type Editing. I'll change the font to Microsoft New Tai Lu. Set the style to bold. And the font size to 157. Let's adjust the anchor point. Make the layer 3D. And then adjust the scale and position. I'll set the scale to 64. Great. Now we want the font to change constantly. There are many ways to do this, but I think this is one of the easiest. Link to the project file, including all the fonts used, is available in the description and comments. Press Ctrl-Shift-D to split the layer. Select the top layer and change the font to permanent marker. Move 3 frames forward and press Ctrl-Shift-D again. Select the top layer and change its font to Alpha Slab 1. Again, 3 frames forward, Ctrl-Shift-D. Change the font to Zombie Zone. 3 frames forward, Ctrl-Shift-D. Change the font to Erotica. Again, move 3 frames forward, Ctrl-Shift-D. Change the font to Limelight. 3 frames forward, Ctrl-Shift-D. Change the font to Wolf 200. Move 3 frames forward, and press Ctrl-Shift-D one last time, and we can just delete this final layer. Okay, now we have a small issue. The size of each text is different because of the different fonts. We need to make them all match the size of the very first text we created. So, I'll drag this text layer back in the timeline to adjust its scale. I'll move it back to its place. Let's do the same for all the other text layers. Alright, that looks good. Now let's make some of the text italic. For that, we'll open the window and click on Character. I'll select the entire text, and we can easily make it italic from here. Click on it, and it turns italic. I think this text would also look good in italics. So let's make this one italic too, like the previous one. Let's see the result. It looks good. Now, select all the text layers except for the very first one, and create a pre-compose. Let's name it Font Style. Double-click on it. Select everything, press Ctrl-Shift-D, and drag them all forward, so they repeat one more time. Let's see the result. It's perfect. Make sure it's 3D. Now we need to draw a line, so let's select the pen tool. I'll change its color to this. Let's bring it down in the timeline so it's between our background and our text. We'll rename it to Purple Line and make it a 3D layer. Let's increase the stroke a bit. Let's add a trim paths to it. Set N to 0. Now we need to create two keyframes for the start. The first keyframe here, another one here, and increase it to 100%. Select both keyframes and press F9. Right-click on the second keyframe, go to Keyframe Velocity. Let's change this to 26. Now for the first keyframe, I'll go into Keyframe Velocity again and change this to 90. And here's the result. Perfect. Now let's create two keyframes for opacity. One here, set the opacity to 0. And another one here, set to 100. It's awesome. Time for the next text. Let's take it off italics. I'll change its font to Roboto and the style to condensed. Adjust the anchor point and make it 3D. Now we need to change the scale and position. I'll turn off the link for the scale. I'll change it to 46 and 40. Now let's change the position to where it looks right. Okay, looks good. Now from the Animate menu, let's add an opacity. Set the opacity to 0. We need to create 2 keyframes for the start. The first one here, and the second one here, increasing it to 100. In the Advanced section, change based on to words. Now let's check the result. Great. For these 2 layers, we also need to create 2 opacity keyframes. One here, and the other one here. Let's set the opacity of the second keyframe to 0. Looks perfect. Since we're going to have a lot of layers, let's keep things organized. I'll change the label colors of these 4 layers. I'll also change the background layer's label color. Let's create a camera. The 50mm preset is good. We won't animate the camera's settings directly. We need to create a null object and make the changes through that. This makes controlling the camera much easier, and we can manage and adjust our animations more efficiently. Create a null object. Make it 3D. Parent the camera to it. Let's rename it to Camera Control 1. Let's create 2 keyframes for position. One here, and the other one here. I'll move this one back a bit until it looks right. And I'll move this one back a little too. Perfect. We need to make the camera movement much smoother. There's a fantastic plugin called Flow that's perfect for this. Make sure both keyframes are selected. I'll choose Cubic Out and hit Apply. That's much better, but we can improve it even more. For that, we need to create another null object. Make it 3D. Parent Camera Control 1 to it. Let's rename it Camera Control 2. Create 2 keyframes for its position. One here, and another one here. I'll move it forward. This will make the camera movement even smoother. Select both keyframes and press F9. Let's select these 3 and change their color, just to keep the timeline organized. Now we need to import all our images. All the images, fonts, and assets used in this video are in the final project file, which you can find linked in the description and comments. I'll create a new folder named Images. Let's bring the After Effects logo into the timeline. Make it 3D. Now I'll adjust the position and scale until it looks right. Now the rotation needs to change. Let's create 2 keyframes for Z rotation. One here And another one here. I changed the first keyframe to -9 and the second keyframe to +3. Looks awesome. Now we'll do the same for the other logos. Bring the Premiere Pro logo into the timeline. Make it 3D. Now adjust its position and scale. I'll set the scale to 26 and adjust the position. Just like the previous logo, let's create 2 keyframes for Z rotation. I'll set the first keyframe to 55 and the second one to 39. Let's drop the last logo into the timeline. Make it 3D. I'll set the scale to 23 and position it where I think it looks good. Now, just like the other logos, create 2 keyframes for Z rotation. Set the first keyframe to 38 and the second to 53. Select all 3 logos. Press T so we can create 2 keyframes for opacity. Create one here and another one here. Select these 3 keyframes and set them all to 0. Looks good. The last thing we need for this part is a vignette effect. Let's create an adjustment layer. Rename it to background effect. Type CC vignette and apply it. Increase the scale of this layer. Set the amount to 160 and the angle of view to 26. Let's also add a noise effect to it and set it to 3. Let's see the final result. Perfect. Now we're going to create part 2, just like this. To create the second part, we need to make a new composition. Let's name it part 2. We should create a new folder and name it compositions. From now on, we'll put all the compositions we make into this folder. This keeps our project organized and professional. Now let's import the images. All the images are in the project file. First, I'll bring the kitchen image into the timeline. I'll adjust the position and scale to where I think it looks good. Let's add a glow effect to it. Increase the glow threshold to about 91. And the glow radius to 11. Now let's bring the chef image into the timeline. Just like the previous image, let's adjust the position and scale. Now let's create the cooking text. I'll change the font to Lalizer. Set the font size to 157. And change the VA to 49. In the timeline, let's drag the cooking text layer between the chef and kitchen layers. Let's make the color white. Adjust the position and scale to get it just right. And adjust the anchor point. There's a fantastic script called Text Style Studio that easily gives our text premium animations. I'll turn off this checkbox. Choose Going In, Coming Out, and click Apply. Let's take it out of 3D mode. Let's see the result. It still needs some fixing. I'll set the rotation into 0. From the Advanced section, I'll decrease the amplitude to 93. Let's see the result. It would be perfect if we just move this IN marker back a bit so the animation finishes sooner. Looks awesome. We need to add two effects. The first is gradient ramp. Change the start color to this. Change the end color to this. Let's place the start of ramp somewhere around here. An end of ramp here looks good. Now let's add the deep glow effect. Decrease the exposure to 0.37 and the radius to 247. Now let's see the result. Perfect. Part 2 is complete. Now we need to bring Part 2 into the Part 1 timeline. Let's move it to the bottom of the layer stack. To make Part 2 visible, let's create two keyframes for the background layer's opacity. One here, and the other one here, setting the opacity to 0. Now let's check the result. Let's make Part 2 a 3D layer. Let's adjust the position and scale of Part 2. Now we need to create a transition between part 1 and part 2. For this we'll need the camera and an adjustment layer. So let's create a new null object. Rename it to Camera Control 3. Let's change its color and make it 3D. And parent Camera Control 2 to Camera Control 3. Now, we just need to create 2 position keyframes for Camera Control 3. First one here. And second one here with a small change. Right now, the camera movement doesn't look good. So, select both keyframes and press F9. Make sure both keyframes are selected. And let's go into the graph editor. If your graphs look like this, you need to right-click and choose Edit Speed Graph. Select the second keyframe and drag its handle all the way to the left. Do the same for the first keyframe's handle. Looks much better now. Now let's build the transition. We only need to build this once, and we can use it in all our future projects. The important thing is to understand which effects are used so you can modify it however you like in the future. To start, let's create an adjustment layer and name it Transition. Add the wiggle position effect. First, set the wiggle speed to 20. The wiggle amount should be 0. Then we need to create 3 keyframes for wiggle amount. One here. Add another keyframe and increase it to 70. 5 frames after that, set it back to 0. Here, where the background goes out of frame, we need to slightly increase the scale of the background and background effect layers. Looks perfect. Now we need to add the CC radial fast blur effect. For this effect, we need to create 4 keyframes. Create first keyframe here and set the amount to 0. Second keyframe here. Third one here. And the last one here. The first and last keyframes should remain at 0. Change the second and third keyframes to 67. The next effect to add is directional blur. For this one, we'll create keyframes just like the previous effect. The first and last keyframes stay at 0. Change the second and third keyframes to 3.7. Now let's see the result. Looks good, but I think we should add one more thing. To complete our transition, we need to add an exposure effect to the background, and the transition will be done. So let's add the exposure effect. For exposure, we need to create 3 keyframes. The first one here, and the second one here. And the last one here, and increase it. The very last thing to do is to go inside the Part 2 composition and move the cooking text a little forward in the timeline. Looks perfect. Now we're going to create Part 3, just like this. To start, let's create a new composition and name it Part 3. Let's put it inside the Compositions folder. Bring Part 1 into the timeline. Now, let's draw a large rectangle. Turn off the stroke. Change the fill color to black. In the Track Matte menu, link Part 1 to the rectangle layer. Now, from the Contents section, Rectangle 1, Rectangle Path 1, let's increase the roundness. Now we need to create 2 keyframes for size. Be careful, we need to keyframe the size under Rectangle Path 1, not the layer scale. Uncheck the Constrain Proportions box. Now, let's adjust it to how we think looks best. Select both keyframes. Let's go into Flow and choose the Circout preset and apply it. Now let's see the result. Looks good. Now we need to add a straight line with the pen tool. Turn off the fill. Enable the stroke and set its color to white. Make sure the anchor point is centered. It needs to be a little bit bigger. Now, let's create a diamond shape with the pen tool. It doesn't need to be perfect, just look like a diamond. The fill should be this color code. The stroke should be the exact same color. Let's give it a deep glow effect. Decrease the radius. Set the exposure to 0.14. Add deep glow to the white line as well. Set the radius to 97. and set the exposure to 0.14. Let's rename them. Change this to white line, and this one to diamond. Adjust the diamond's anchor point and change the scale until it looks good. Perfect. Now we need to create two keyframes for position. One here. In the second keyframe, the diamond should have moved to the left. Select both keyframes and press F9. Let's go into the graph editor. Pull the second keyframe's handle all the way to the left, and pull the first keyframe's handle a little to the left, until its influence is around 20. Now, for both the diamond and the white line, we need to create two keyframes for opacity. Create one keyframe here and set the opacity to 0. The second one here with opacity at 100. Now let's see the result. Perfect. Now let's add the text hue and saturation. The font should be Arial. The style should be narrow. And let's change the VA to 46. Adjust its anchor point. And change the scale and position until it looks right. Let's add deep glow to the text as well. Change the radius to 96 and the exposure to 0.14. For this one, just like the others, let's add two keyframes for opacity. Let's see the final result. That looks really good. Now we're going to create part 4, just like this. Let's create a new composition and rename it to part 4. We'll move it into our compositions folder. Now, drag part 3 into the timeline and make it a 3D layer. Let's create a new camera. The 50mm preset is good. Create a null object, make it 3D, and rename it to Camera Control 1. I'll change the color of both layers to yellow, and then parent the camera to the null object. Now, let's create two position keyframes. First one here, and second one here. Select both keyframes, and from the flow script, we'll choose Circout and hit apply. That looks great. Now we need to add 3 effects to the Part 3 layer. First, add tint. Set the amount to tint to 0. And create a keyframe. Then move forward to here and set the amount to tint to 100. The second effect we'll add is camera lens blur. We need to create 2 keyframes for this. Set the blur radius to 0 and click the stopwatch to create a keyframe. A few frames later, increase it to 11. The last effect we need to add is a blur. Just like the previous effect, we need to create 2 keyframes. The first one here, and the second one here where we'll increase the blurriness. Now let's check the result. Looks really good. It's time to add our texts. I'll type 1. The font should be Arial, style bold, and the size 157. Adjust its anchor point if it's not centered. Make it 3D and then change the scale and position until we get what we want. Now for the next text. Decrease the VA to -14. Adjust its anchor point. Make it 3D. And set its scale and position. Alright, now for the last text. Increase the VA to 118. Adjust the anchor point. Make it 3D. And change the scale and position. Now, let's add deep glow to one of the texts. Change the radius to 124 and the exposure to 0.12. Now we can just copy this deep glow effect and paste it onto the other two text layers. Let's see the result. Perfect. Create a new null object. Rename it to Camera Control 2. Make it 3D and change its color to yellow. Parent Camera Control 1 to Camera Control 2. We need to create two keyframes for position. The first one here. The second one a few frames forward, and we'll change it slightly. This looks good. Select both keyframes and press F9. Right-click the first keyframe and choose Keyframe Velocity. Change this to 17, and this one to 70. Click OK. For the second keyframe, just change this value to 70. We also need to create two keyframes for Z rotation. The first keyframe is here. For the second keyframe, set the Z rotation to 36. Select both and press F9. Right-click and choose Keyframe Velocity. Set this to 17 and this to 70. Now for the second keyframe. Change this one to 70. Let's see how that looks. It's perfect. Now we need to create two rectangular white pages. We could use the rectangle tool, but in this tutorial, I'll use a pre-made rectangular white image I created earlier. It makes no difference, so do whatever is easier for you. I'll import the image into the timeline and make it 3D. Change the Z rotation to 36. Adjust the position and scale to where they look good. Let's move it to the left. Press Ctrl D to duplicate it. And drag this new one over to the right. We need to create position keyframes for our white pages. First one here, and the other one here. Let's adjust this one a little bit. Let's create two keyframes for the other white page as well. We'll change this one just a bit too. Now let's take a look at the result. Looks awesome. Now we need to import the food picture. But first, let's create a new composition. Name it Food Dish 1. I'll move the Food 1 image into the Images folder, and then into the timeline. Using the Align tool, I'll make sure the image is centered. Duplicate it with Ctrl D. Hide the top layer. Add the posterize effect to the bottom layer. Increase the level to 13. Now, unhide the top layer. We need to add two effects to it. The first is tint. And after that, add CC ball action. Set the grid spacing to 4 and the ball size to 50. Down here, click on Toggle Switches and change the mode of the top layer to multiply. It's perfect. Let's go back to the Part 4 composition and import the food dish comp. We need to add two effects to it. The first is curves. And we'll just hit auto. The second effect to add is drop shadow. Set the opacity to 63 and the distance to 19, and a softness of 75 is good. You can see the difference with and without the drop shadow. Make it a 3D layer. First, set the Z rotation to 3. Then, adjust the position and scale. Let's see the result. Perfect. I think it would look better if the food dish was a little lower. Create a new null object and rename it to Camera Control 3. Then, make it 3D and change its color. Let's move it next to the other camera control layers. Parent Camera Control 2 to 3. Now we need to create two keyframes for position. One here, and the other one here. Let's change the position slightly. The goal is to bring the camera a little closer. Looks perfect. Now, to make the movement smoother, I'm going to do something that, from experience, gives a really nice motion. Select both keyframes and press F9. Right-click on the first keyframe, Keyframe Velocity. Change this to 17, and this one to 70. For the second keyframe, change this to 70, and this to 17. The result is perfect. Every time we want to create a new camera move, we should make a new null object. Rename it to Camera Control 4. Make it 3D and change its color. Then bring it next to the others. Parent Camera Control 3 to it. Now we need to create two position keyframes. One here, and the other one here, and let's change the position. Select both keyframes and press F9. Go into the graph editor. Drag the second keyframe's handle all the way to the left, and drag the first keyframe's handle to the left until the influence is about 5%. Now let's see the result. Excellent. When the food dish gets to this point, the previous text layers are directly behind it. We should select these layers, 1, st, time, and part 3, and with Ctrl-Shift-D, we split them and delete the rest. Now it looks like the previous layers disappear as the food dish moves. Let's move the white page a little to the right so it looks balanced. So, for the white page, let's add two more keyframes. The first one here. The second one here, and we'll move it slightly to the right. It looks good. Now we need to create the text perfect. But before that, let's temporarily hide the white pages. Type out perfect. Change the font to Lalizer. Increase the VA. Let's also increase the size. Adjust the anchor point and make it 3D. Set the Z rotation to 36. Now change the position and scale until we get the look we want. Now, let's create two position keyframes. First one here, and the second one here. Select both keyframes, press F9, and then go into the graph editor. Drag the second keyframe's handle all the way to the left, and pull the first handle to the left until the influence is about 12. Looks good. Now from the Animate menu, add opacity. Bring the opacity down to 0. Now for the start, we need to create two keyframes. The first one here. The second one here, and we'll increase it to 100%. Select both keyframes. From the flow script, choose Chord Out and apply. Let's see the result. We need to put a line behind the perfect text. So, select the pen tool and draw a line. Change its color to this code. Adjust its anchor point. Make it 3D. Change the Z rotation to 36. And now, adjust the position and scale to where we think looks good. From here, add a trim paths. Set the end to 0, and we need to create 2 keyframes for end. One here, the other one here, and we'll increase it to 100%. Select both keyframes. From the flow script, choose chord out and apply. Let's see the result. Our line has 2 problems. First, it's not in sync with the text. Second, it doesn't move down with the text. To solve the first problem, let's move this keyframe back a bit to sync with the text. The first problem is solved. To solve the second problem, we need to create 2 position keyframes, exactly like the ones we made for our text. The first one here. The second one here, and we'll change the position. Select both keyframes and press F9. Go into the graph editor. Pull the second keyframe's handle all the way to the left. And pull the first handle to the left until the influence is about 12. Now let's see the result. Looks perfect. Now we need to add a deep glow effect to our text. Set the radius to 315 and the exposure to 0.03. Okay, now we just need to unhide the white pages we hid earlier. Let's see the result. Looks awesome. Okay, now we need to create an adjustment layer. Rename it to blur. Now, let's bring the blur layer down. It should be above the time text. Why did we create this blur layer? Because we want everything behind the food dish to be blurred. So we'll use 2 effects. The first effect is camera lens blur. Set the blur radius to 0. Now we need to create 2 keyframes. The first one here. The second one here, and we'll increase the blur radius to 10. Now let's add another blur effect. Create a keyframe here. The other one here, and set the blurriness to 10. Click on the blur layer and press U. Select all the keyframes and press F9. Go into the graph editor. Select the second set of keyframes. Drag the handle to the left until the influence reaches about 65%. Now everything behind the food dish is blurred. Now we need to create a few more texts. Let's type the first text. The font should be Bebas Neue and the style bold. The size should be 157. A VA of 109 is also good. The color should be this code. Adjust its anchor point. Make it 3D. Now we just need to adjust the rotation, scale, and position. Now, from the Animate menu, add an opacity. Set the opacity to 0. Create 2 keyframes for start. One here. The other one here and increase it to 100. Select both keyframes and just press F9. From the Layers transform, we need to keyframe the opacity. The first one here. The second one here and set it to 0. Let's see the result. Looks awesome. For the next texts, we don't need to do all this work again. We just need to click on the text we just made and press Ctrl+D. Let's rename it. And change the text here as well. Okay, that's good. Just increase the VA. 118 is good. Let's make the scale a little smaller. Adjust the position. Let's see the result. Now we need to create the next text, so with Ctrl+D, we'll duplicate this layer and drag it up. Rename it to Always. And change the text here as well. Change the font to Billy Black. The style should be regular. The VA should be lower. I think 47 is good. Let's make its size a bit bigger. Now we just need to adjust the scale and position. Now we have to create our last text. Again, duplicate with Ctrl+D. Rename it to something. And change the text here as well. Make the size smaller. Now adjust the position and scale. Let's check the result. Looks really good. The next thing we need to do is import the image of the hand with the salt shaker. I'll move the image into the Images folder and bring it into the timeline. Make it 3D. Now we need to change the position, scale, and rotation to get the look we want. It looks awesome. Now we need to create two keyframes for position. The first one here. The second one here. Now we need to change this keyframe. Now let's see the result. The animation doesn't look smooth. So, select both keyframes, press F9, and then go into the graph editor. Drag the second keyframe's handle to the left until the influence is about 85. Let's see the result. It's perfect. Now we need to create the salt particles. With this tutorial, you can not only create salt particles but also other particles that might be useful in the future, like snow, dust, rain, and many other things. So, to start making the salt particles, we need to create a new composition. Rename it to salt, and put it in the compositions folder. The first thing we do is create a new solid and rename it to salt. Set the width and height to 50. Now we need to make it look like salt particles, so add the roughen edges effect. Increase the border to about 38. And increase the scale to about 381. Now let's hide it. Create another solid. Name it Particles. Set the width to 1080 and height to 1920. The color doesn't matter at all. We need to add two effects to it. The first effect to add is CC Particle World. You'll get something like this. We need to make some changes to this effect to make it look like sprinkling salt particles. Change the birth rate to 0.3. Longevity to 2.13. Click on Producer and set Position X to 0.1. The next thing to change is Physics. Click on it. Change Animation from Explosive to Direction Axis. Change Velocity to 0.2. Change Gravity to 0.21. And Extra to 1.09. Click on Particle. Change the particle type to Textured Quad Polygon. Click on Texture. Change Texture Layer from None to Salt, which is the layer we made and hid. Change Texture Time to Effects and Masks. Set Birth Size to 0. And Death Size to 0.19. Increase Size Variation to 100%. It's slowly starting to look like sprinkling salt particles. Now we need to adjust the position and scale. Add the deep glow effect. Set the radius to 91. Exposure to 1.39. The brightness of the particles should be random, so click on Input and increase the threshold to 75. Now let's see the result. Perfect. Let's go back to part 4. Import the salt composition we just created. We don't need to make it 3D. We need to adjust its position, scale, and rotation. The salt layer should be below the hand layer. Let's move the salt layer a bit forward in time. We'll cut it from this point. Now let's see the result. Excellent. Okay, now we need to create a transition. This is the second transition you're learning in this video. We only need to build this once, and we can use it in all our future projects. Create a new adjustment layer. Rename it to Transition. We need to add a few effects here. First, add Wiggle Position. We need to create 4 keyframes for wiggle amount. Set the wiggle speed to 20. The wiggle amount should start at 0. First keyframe here. The second one here, and increase it to 70. Click on the transition layer and press U to see our keyframes. One frame forward, create the third keyframe and leave the wiggle amount at 70. For frames later, set it back to 0. The next effect is CC Radial Fast Blur. We need to create 4 keyframes, and they should be in the exact same spots as the previous effect. Set the amount to 0 and create a keyframe. Here, change it to 70. Here, create a keyframe and leave it at 70. Here, set the amount back to 0. The next effect is directional blur. For this one too, we need to create 4 keyframes just like before. First one here. Second one here and increase it to about 6. Third one here and leave it at 6. Fourth one here and set it to 0. Now let's add the final effect. Type in exposure. We'll create 4 keyframes just like before. Create one keyframe here. Here, increase it a bit. Create another keyframe without any changes. And here, set it back to 0. Let's see the result. Looks perfect. From now on, you can use this transition in any project you want. Okay, the next step is to make the white pages turn red during the transition. It's easy. Add gradient ramp to a white page. Change the start color to this code. Now let's drag the start of ramp to the top of the page. And drag the end of ramp to the bottom. Do the exact same thing for the other white page. Now, we need to increase blend with original to 100% and create 2 keyframes for it. The first one here. 3 frames later, set it to 0. Do the exact same thing for the other white page. When the transition plays, the food dish layer should also change. We just need to add tint to it. Set the amount to tint to 0. And we need to create 2 keyframes for it right when the transition starts. One here. The other one 3 frames later, and increase the amount to tint. About 80% is good. Make sure it doesn't go all the way to 100%. Let's check the result. Looks really good. Now let's create the final section of part 4, which is the missing text. Create a new text layer. Click on the solo button so we can only see our text. Let's type missing. The font should be Bebas Neue, and the style should be bold. Change the color to this code. Let's increase its size. About 196 is good. Increase the VA. And adjust the anchor point. Now we need to use the Textivo 2 script. This script is used in many projects and speeds up our workflow, allowing us to create many different types of animations. Okay, what we need to do is make sure our text is selected. Click on this button. First, it creates 2 keyframes on its own. Select both keyframes and move them to where you think looks good. Now we need to change its settings. Change the delay to 3. From the direction section, change this to random. This will make the letters appear randomly. Now from the transform section, position, increase the Y value. We also need to increase the rotation. About 147 is good. From the style section, we need to change the blur. Increase this to about 42. But decrease this one to about -57. You can see the difference. The next effect to add is extrude. This is actually a plugin that makes our text visually 3D and has a lot of customization options. Let's type extrude. We need to decrease the extrusion length back. About 6 is enough. Change the side fill color to black. From here, click on the transparency grid to get a better view. Let's add the next effect. Type drop shadow. Increase the opacity to 60. Increase the softness to 131. Now click the solo button again to see everything. And turn off the transparency grid. It needs to be cut from here, so press Ctrl-Shift-D. Now we need to make it a half circle. Select the pen tool. Make sure our text is selected. Make a half circle. From the text section, go to Path Options. Change Path to Mask 1. Now you just need to adjust it a bit to get the shape you want. Now let's see the result. Looks really good. Let's add 2 more effects, and part 4 will be complete. First is the tint effect, which we'll add to the hand layer. The second is the curves effect. You can change it like this. And that's it. Part 4 is done. Now we're going to create part 5, just like this. Let's create a new composition and name it part 5. We'll move it into our compositions folder. Now, let's drag part 4 into the timeline and make it 3D. First of all, we need to create the background. So, let's create a new solid and name it background. We'll create 2 keyframes for its position. One here, and the second one here. Now, we just need to move it over to the right. Let's make it a 3D layer. Select both keyframes and press F9. Let's go into the graph editor. Drag the handles for both the first and second keyframes all the way to the left. Let's cut the part 4 layer from here. Looks perfect. Now we need to create a new text layer. The font should be Barlow condensed, the style regular, and the size 103, and a VA of 6 looks good. Adjust the anchor point. Make it a 3D layer. And adjust the scale and position. We're going to use the Textivo 2 script again. Make sure the text layer is selected. Click on this plus sign. It will automatically create 2 keyframes. Let's select both of them and move them back a bit. With the text layer still selected, let's go into Textivo 2, click here, and choose the words option. Our text will now appear word by word. Okay, let's go to the Effect Controls panel. Change the delay to 3. Under Transform, Position, increase the Y value, and set the opacity to 0. From the Style section, increase the blur. Now we need to draw 3 circles. Let's draw the first circle. We'll make its color completely black. Adjust its anchor point. Make it a 3D layer. And let's parent the circle layer to the background layer. I think it would look better if we adjust the position and scale a bit. Okay, that's good. We need to create 2 position keyframes for it. One here, and the other one here, and I'll change the position slightly. Now, let's draw the second circle. Adjust its anchor point. Create 2 keyframes for its position. The first keyframe here. The second one here. And let's change the position. Make it a 3D layer. Select both keyframes and press F9. Let's go into the graph editor. Now we just need to drag the second keyframe's handle all the way to the left. Now, let's create the last circle. It should be in the center of the screen. Change its color to this. Adjust the scale and position to where you think looks good. We need to create 2 keyframes for scale. One here, and another one here, and we'll decrease the scale down to about 20%. Select both keyframes and press F9. Go into the graph editor. Drag the second keyframe's handle all the way to the left. Looks good. Now we also need to create 2 keyframes for opacity. The first keyframe is here, and set the opacity to 0. The next keyframe should be a few frames forward, and we'll increase it to 100%. I'm just going to move this circle a little. Let's see what we have so far. Looks really good. Let's create a new adjustment layer. Rename it to Blur. Add a blur effect to it. We need to create 2 keyframes for blurriness. The first one here. And the second one here, and let's increase the blurriness. Make sure to make this layer 3D as well. Now, let's import our picture into the Images folder. Then, bring it into the timeline. Make it a 3D layer. Let's make it smaller. And change its position. I think it would be better if the middle circle was a bit larger. Add the tint effect. We need to create 2 keyframes for amount to tint. One here, and the other one here, and set the amount to tint to 0. Now add the deep glow effect. Change the radius to 249 and the exposure to 0.1. Let's create a folder and name it Videos. Now, import the video I've provided for you into this folder. Drag the video into the timeline. It's a very short video. Let's move the video forward in time. Make it a 3D layer and decrease its scale. Click on Toggle Switches. Let's connect the track mat of the Food 2 layer to the comp. Let's check the result. When the video ends, the Food 2 image also disappears. To prevent this from happening, right-click on the video layer, go to Time, and click on Enable Time Remapping. Now we can extend the video layer's duration. Let's also cut the Food 2 layer here. That's perfect. Let's create a new camera. The 50mm preset is fine. To control the camera, we'll create a null object. Rename it to Camera Control. Make it 3D, and parent the camera to it. We need to create 2 keyframes for position. The first one here, the second one here, and let's change the position. Select both and press F9. Let's go into the graph editor. Drag the second keyframe's handle all the way to the left. Let's check the result. Let's wait for it to load. Perfect. Now we need to create the text. Let's type same. Change its color to black. The font should be Barlow Condensed, style bold, size 103. A VA of 41 is good. Adjust its anchor point. Make it 3D. Increase the scale. And adjust the position. Let's create 2 keyframes for opacity. The first one here with opacity at 0. The second one here, and we'll set it to 100. Now let's create the next text. Let's write dish. All the settings should be the same as the previous text, the only difference being the VA, which we'll set to 6. Adjust the anchor point, make it 3D. Adjust the scale and position. Let's move the dish layer below the food to layer. Now we need to create the last text. We'll only create this text once, and after that, we can use it in all our projects, so it's worth taking the time to create it properly. Let's write every day. All the settings should be the same as the previous text, but we'll set the VA to 41. The color should be a goldish tone, so let's use this code. Adjust its anchor point, make it 3D, and adjust the scale and position. We need to use the Textivo script again. Make sure the text is selected and click on the plus sign. Let's move both keyframes back together. And move the second keyframe back a bit more. Set the delay to 4. From the Style section, increase the blur. From the Transform section, set the opacity to 0. Add the drop shadow effect. Set the opacity to 60. And the softness to 62. Now let's add the CC light sweep effect. Set the width to 20. Edge intensity to 47. Edge thickness to 1.4. Set the direction to 206. You can set this number to whatever you like. Now let's change the center and place it somewhere around here. Now we need to create 3 keyframes for the center. The first one here. The second one here, and let's change the location of the center. The third keyframe should be exactly the same as the first one. So I'll copy the first position keyframe and paste it on the third one. Now, select all the keyframes and press F9. I'll move all the keyframes back together. Hold down Alt and click on the stopwatch, and here we just need to type loop out. This will make our 3 keyframes repeat continuously. We need to add 2 more CC light sweep effects. Let's add the second one. And its settings should be exactly the same as the previous one, except for the center. The center should be slightly different, and you can place it according to your own taste. Change it to 20, 47, 1.4, and change this to 206. Just like before, create 3 keyframes for the center. First one here. The second keyframe here and change the center. The third keyframe should be exactly like the first. So I'll copy the first position keyframe and paste it on the third one. Select all 3 and press F9. Like before, hold down Alt and click on the stopwatch, type loop out. And like before, we need to move them back. Let's add the last CC light sweep. The settings are exactly the same as before, except for the direction and center. First keyframe here. Second one here, and change the center. The third keyframe should be exactly like the first. So I'll copy the first position keyframe and paste it on the third one. The rest is the same as the previous ones. For the dish text, we need to create 2 opacity keyframes. The first one here, and we set it to 0. The second one here, and we set it to 100. Add the glow effect. Set the glow threshold to 100%. And the glow radius to 28. The last effect to add is deep glow. Change the radius to 170 and the exposure to 0.23. Just wait for it to finish loading. Now let's see the result. Perfect. Now we're going to create part 6, just like this. Let's create a new composition and name it part 6. We'll move it into our compositions folder. Let's bring part 5 into the timeline. Let's create a large circle. From the Track Matte section, connect part 5 to shape layer 1. Now we need to create 2 keyframes for the circle scale. The first keyframe here, and the second one here where we'll set the scale to 0. Select both keyframes and press F9. Let's go into the graph editor. Drag the second keyframe's handle all the way to the left, and pull the first keyframe's handle to the left until the influence is about 4%. Perfect. Now we need to build our background. Our background consists of 4 solid layers. Let's create the first solid. We'll name it background 1. Let's drag it all the way down to be the last layer. Now for the second solid. We'll name it background 2 and make it completely white. Let's bring this layer down as well. Add the fractal noise effect. Set the contrast to 149. Now we reduce the brightness and scale to 9. Next, add the posterize effect. Press U and lower the opacity. This will give us a light dotted look. Let's create the third solid. We'll name it background 3. Bring it down in the layer stack. Add the grid effect. Change it to width and height sliders. Set the width to 25 and the border to 1. Now, add the wave warp effect. Change the wave type to noise. Set the wave height to 13, wave width to 190, and direction to 114. Let's set the wave speed to 0. Add a blur effect. Set the blurriness to 3. Finally, add the CC lens effect. Set the size to 172. Now, simply reduce the opacity until it looks right. Let's add the final solid. We'll name it background 4. Bring it down. Add the fractal noise effect to it. Change the noise type to spline. Set the contrast to 171. Brightness to -84. and complexity to 10.5. Now, change its mode to add. Let's select all 4 background layers and change their color to keep our workspace more organized. I'll change the color of these 2 as well. Let's cut the Part 5 layer here. Import the lock image into the Images folder. Now, bring it into the timeline. Let's make some adjustments to its position, scale, and rotation. Add the directional blur effect and set the blur length to 12.5 to give our image a soft, blurry feel. Add a blur effect and set the blurriness to 27. Add the hue and saturation effect. Set master saturation to 48 and master lightness to -40. Duplicate it with Ctrl D. Right-click on it, go to Transform, and click on Flip Horizontal. Now we just need to change the rotation and position. Let's also lower the opacity a bit. Duplicate it again with Ctrl D. Right-click on it, go to Transform, and click on Flip Horizontal. Adjust the rotation, position, and scale. And lower the opacity as well. Let's change the color of all 3 layers. Add a new solid. Change its color to black. And lower its opacity. Now, let's create some floating particles in the air. Create a new solid. Make it completely white. Name it Circle. Set its width and height to 50. Make sure the circle layer is selected and create a circular mask inside it. Now, hide the layer. Create another new solid. Name it Particles. Set the width to 1080 and height to 1920. Add the CC Particle World effect to it. Set the birth rate to 0.1 and longevity to 3.55. In the producer section, change both radius Y and radius X to 0.275. Click on Physics. Change the animation to viscous. Set the velocity to 1.93, gravity to 0, and resistance to 0.5. Now go to the particle section. Change the particle type to textured disk. Click on Texture, and for the texture layer, choose the circle layer we just created. Change texture time to effects and masks. Also, check this box. Decrease the birth size way down. 0.07 is good. Set the depth size to 0.1. Maximize the size variation and max opacity to 100. And let's set both the birth color and death color to white. That looks awesome. Now, let's create a light in the corner. Create a new solid and rename it. Change its color to this code. Let's make it bigger. Make sure the light layer is selected. Create a circular mask. Adjust its anchor point. Increase the mask feather and mask expansion until we get the look we want. It looks really good. Okay, now we need to import the 3D key into the project. For that, let's create a new composition and name it Key. Let's put it in the Compositions folder. Create a new folder and name it 3D Models. Import the model into the folder, and then drag it into the timeline. We need to adjust its scale, position, and rotation. Let's decrease the scale a lot. Something like 0.2 is good. Create two keyframes for position. One here. And the other one here. Now let's go to the first keyframe and change the position, moving it further away. Select both keyframes and press F9. Go into the graph editor. Drag the second keyframe's handle to the left until the influence is about 95%. the rotation needs to change. Set Z rotation to 3, Y rotation to -49, and X rotation to -42. Create a keyframe for all the rotation properties here. Set Z rotation to 30, Y rotation to 6, and X rotation to -2. Select all the rotation keyframes and press F9. Go into the graph editor. Drag the second set of keyframes handles to the left until the influence is about 95%. Let's check the result. Perfect. Let's add 2 opacity keyframes. Create the first keyframe here and set the opacity to 0. A few frames later, set the opacity to 100. Okay, let's go back to the Part 6 composition. Select all the layers except for the Part 5 layer and Shape Layer 1. Let's cut their start point here. Now, select the Part 5 layer and Shape Layer 1 and bring them to the top of the layer stack. Very good. Let's import the key composition we just made into the timeline. Add hue and saturation to it. Set master saturation to 2 and master lightness to -48. Add another hue and saturation effect. Check the colorize box. Change colorize hue to 41 and colorize saturation to 100. Now add a glow effect to it. Set glow threshold to 70, glow radius to 250, and glow intensity to 2.5. Now it's time to create the texts. Let's write one. The font should be Bebas Neue, style bold, size 209, and VA 144. Turn off the fill and turn on the stroke. Adjust the anchor point. Now let's adjust the scale and position. We need to create 2 opacity keyframes. The first one here set to 0. The second one here set to 100. Duplicate our text with Ctrl D. Rename it to day. Make the scale a little bigger. Adjust the anchor point. Adjust the position. Select both opacity keyframes and move them forward in time. We also need to create two texts at the bottom. Let's write "You will." Change the font to Barlow Condensed. Style to medium. Turn off the stroke and turn on the fill. And size to 209. Change the VA to -3. Adjust its anchor point. Change the scale and position to how you like it. From the Animate menu, add opacity. Set the opacity to 0. Create two keyframes for the start. The first one here. The second one here, and increase it to 100. From the Advanced section, change based on to words. Select both keyframes and press F9. Add the deep glow effect. Set the radius to 209 and exposure to 0.11. Perfect. Now, duplicate this text with Ctrl D. Change its size to 261 and its color to this code. Adjust the scale and position. Type master it. Press U and move both keyframes a little forward. Now let's see the result. Excellent. We need a transition, and there's no need to build it again because we already made a great one. Go into Part 4 and copy the transition layer. And paste it here. We just need to move the transition layer a bit forward to sync it with the scene. Let's check the result. That looks awesome. Let's create a new adjustment layer. Name it Flicker. Add the curves effect to it. And adjust it a bit like this. Create two opacity keyframes. The first one here. The second one here, and set the opacity to 0. Hold down Alt and click on the stopwatch. Type wiggle. And 55. 55. The project is finished. We'll just wait for it to load once. Now let's see the final result. It looks perfect. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.